Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Faye. So we're nearly on the home stretch now, James. Another year is coming to an end. It's the last days and weeks. How's it going for you?
Yeah, I feel like I'm running on fumes now. I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to the break.
Yeah.
But yeah, the week was good. The highlight was we had a gathering to mark the completion of phase 1 of our ground floor refurb at the Bradfield. And there's a ton more stuff on the way in the new year, including a refurb of the cafe. We're putting in EV chargers and a ton more. So exciting times. But during the event, we officially opened our new boardroom, which is named after Rory Landman, with a little ribbon cutting ceremony that Rory was there for. So for those of you that don't know, Rory was Trinity College's senior bursar who conceived and delivered the Bradfield Centre, along with Greg Winter. And of course, Greg is also the chair of our judges for the Trinity Bradfield Prize. So it was just really lovely to get a little gathering together and be able to publicly thank Rory for all of his support over the years. And and Greg actually was also in the Bradfield. Greg and the rest of the Trinity Bradfield Prize judges, we all gathered yesterday to shortlist the finalists for the final, which is the 28th of January. So you'll not be surprised to know that we've all been blown away again by the quality and the diversity of the ideas. So if you want to meet the people behind the leading innovation coming out of the Cambridge University, then tickets are still available. So go to trinitybradfieldprize.co.uk to grab a seat.
I will try and remember to book a seat. You know me, I'm notorious at just rocking up, seeing an invite and then just rocking up at an event. So I'll try and do it properly.
We might let you in without a ticket.
Oh, thanks. You're so lovely. Thankfully, most people do. They kind of know what I'm like, don't they? Same as you. My family are like, how come you're still working all the hours God sends? Everyone else is giving in and winding down. Me, committed to the cause. So I did go out and about a few times last week. I started the week with the AIM squad over at O2H, where we debated risk appetite. And I have to say, James, I sat on my hands for most of the discussion because I like and embrace taking risks. I just think they're challenges. It was a really interesting discussion. I met some new people from outside the region, and O2H are great at pulling in people from across the UK as well. So that was great. I then went to an event hosted by the Cambridge Wireless team, where they pulled together their SIG champions at the end of the year for a bit of a catch up and to go through some of the plans for 2026. So it was great to spend a little bit of time with them. We obviously did a fair bit on the podcast again, which is good. Always a pleasure, never a chore. And then, just like I said at the start of it, just loads of work, really. But yeah, I'm definitely getting ready for a break now, it has to be said. But I finish on Friday, so that's me then done.
Should we move on to the news? Our first story, Cambridge-born legal-grade AI specialist Luminance is doubling down on scale and leadership and market reach in the United States after a 2.5x increase in US revenue over the past year. The US now represents 44% of global revenue for Luminance, whose technology was developed by AI specialists in the University of Cambridge. The company has onboarded Silicon Valley tech veteran Mario Cuerzo, who's renowned for leading Google's biggest consumer hardware initiatives, to play a central role in Luminance's expansion into the enterprise market as Luminance senior product advisor based in San Francisco. And Kim Winter as its new VP of marketing, who joins from New York-based startup Yotpo, where she led global marketing initiatives.
Brilliant. So Kodiak Technologies, we spoke to them a couple of weeks ago, actually, in episode 168. They have completed an £850,000 funding round backed by more than 20 high net worth investors across the climate tech and deep tech communities. You may remember Kodiak Technologies is pioneering organic electrolytes for long duration energy storage, and it's founded on patented research developed out of the University of Cambridge. The funding will be used to accelerate development with a view to raising a substantial round in mid-2026 to establish scaled-up demonstration projects in a number of global markets. And it's been really amazing during the course of last week to see that news land. In the whole scheme of things, and we'll talk about another funding round shortly, £850,000 isn't huge, but actually it's really significant, and what they're doing has got a lot of people in the chemistry and battery market really excited. So they're definitely one to watch.
Another AI-related story, a groundbreaking collaboration between the University of Cambridge and the Nobel Sustainability Trust has been officially unveiled in Miami. The NST has chosen the Cambridge Frontier Technologies Laboratory as a strategic academic partner from 2026. The partnership will focus on frontier technologies, AI governance, sustainability, innovation, and future global solutions.
So now to the big heavy-hitting news piece. Cambridge headquartered New Quantum is hailing what it calls a record-shattering $60 million Series A fundraising to stimulate a fresh phase of international expansion. New Quantum says it's the largest financing round ever raised by a pure-play quantum networking company. The funding will accelerate New Quantum's mission to reach fault tolerance by interconnecting quantum processors into a more powerful distributed quantum computer, unlocking a projected $1 trillion quantum computing market. The massively oversubscribed round was led by National Grid partners and included participation from Gresham House Ventures and Morpheus Ventures, all of which are new backers. And there was follow-on support from existing investors, Amadeus Capital Partners, IQ Capital, RN Innovation Capital, Cambridge Enterprise Ventures, East Innovate, NSSIF, and Samito Corporation's Presidio Ventures.
Fantastic news. Cambridge NeuroWorks has revealed a new UK-wide initiative designed to power high-risk, high-impact experimentation in early-stage neurotechnology. The Blue Sky Proof of Concept Fund it has launched is designed to accelerate bold neurotech breakthroughs nationwide, paving the way for a new generation of neurotechnologies to treat conditions such as depression, dementia, chronic pain, epilepsy, and nervous system injuries. The fund will support a 6-month hypothesis testing projects with the potential to reshape a future where neurological conditions will no longer limit human potential. Each project delivered through the UK Higher Education Institution will receive up to £50,000 for costs, access to subject matter experts, ongoing support and inclusion to the Cambridge NeuroWorks community and network. Applications close on the 20th of January 2026, with successful projects starting between the 15th of June and the 15th of September 2026. This initiative is part of the Cambridge NeuroWorks programme, supported by multi-million-pound funding from the UK government's Advanced Research and Innovation Agency.
A great opportunity for anyone in this space. And when we get onto the actual podcast episode, Mike talks about the neurodegenerative space being a really important last frontier. This is a great opportunity for people to get involved in. So lastly, we have a new report on the global rankings of tech cities. So a great way of ending the year. Savills, who run the report on the world's 100 best tech cities, is now out and available for everyone to look at, and it shows London having risen from 4th to 3rd and Cambridge leading the rest of the country's chasing pack in 37th place. Other cities include Bristol at 60, Oxford at 66, Manchester at 68, and so you're basically starting to add up lots of places showcasing the breadth and depth of tech talent and capacity in the small geographical area of the UK. Other European cities in the Savills Tech Cities Index include Paris at 15th, Berlin at 19th, Stockholm at 22nd, Amsterdam at 24th, Munich 25th, Barcelona 39th, and Madrid 45th, whilst in the Middle East, Dubai has risen 20 places to 43rd. So pretty impressive cities being listed there. London is only beaten by San Francisco and New York.
Right, great. Okay, so this week's episode, and we've got to say we're very grateful for Kathryn and Michael fitting us in. They had an incredibly hectic schedule on the day of the recording. So good luck to those who listen to the podcast at 1.5 or 2 times speed, because we went like the clappers as they had to tail it out of the interview straight to another event. But it's a great fast-paced way to wrap up the year.
We're here for our end of year episode. We're delighted to have Kathryn Chapman and Michael Anstey with us today. I think everyone knows you, but let's not assume, and we do have a large audience not in Cambridge and the UK. So Kathryn, quick intro, please.
Yeah, hi Faye. Delighted to be here. So my name's Kathryn Chapman and I'm the Executive Director of an organisation called Innovate Cambridge.
And I'm Mike Anstey, a partner at Cambridge Innovation Capital, which is a venture capital firm based in Cambridge. And honoured to be a board member of Innovate Cambridge, working closely with Kathryn.
Super. James, do you want to introduce? No, I'm joking. I don't actually really want you to introduce yourself.
We haven't got time.
That was half. Yeah, we haven't got time. Very top level, 2025. How has it been for you?
I'm going to say awesome. From an Innovate Cambridge perspective, I think, we kicked off the year, and it's amazing to think that it was January, with the announcement of our Strategic Advisory Council and the blueprint of the Innovate Cambridge strategy. And actually, I think the year, from an Innovate Cambridge perspective, has just gone from strength to strength. I think, coming to a height at the summit, I think, in October. But it's been a really good year in terms of the momentum, a good year in terms of the amount of people that are really getting behind the inclusive innovation agenda. And I think, we'll see a mixed picture, and Mike can talk a little bit more about general investment. But I think for Cambridge as a whole, when you look at Cambridge compared to other cities around the UK, I think 2025 has been a good year.
Super. Mike?
I think it's been quite dependent on which sector you operate in. And so our friends that are involved in anything with the two letters AI have had a really exciting year, and companies are thriving and attracting lots of capital and lots of attention. Those of us on the life sciences side have had more of a struggle. It's been difficult to raise meaningful rounds, and it's been difficult to be trying to globalize, especially if you are an early stage life sciences company. And so that is common in the world we live in. When some sectors are thriving, others are suffering, and this will, of course, bounce back, and life sciences will take off again, and AI will take a sidestep. But ending 2025, I'm perhaps not as ambitious as Kathryn to say it's awesome, but I do see signs of hope, and really optimistic that 2026 will be a fantastic year for all of us.
Yeah, and I think on the podcast as well, lots of the conversations we've had, they've reflected that. There've been some real ups and downs, and sadly there have been a number of business failures this year in Cambridge, in our region. But I think that's just reflective of the global marketplace anyway.
Exactly. When you look at ending 2025, one of the landmark events is Kathryn's event, the Innovate Cambridge Summit. And I think you can get a good temperature check on what's happening in the ecosystem at that event. And as you say, you reflect on 2025, where there's been business failures, but also some thriving businesses. But I think Cambridge as an ecosystem has had a really good year. Cambridge is on the map, and it's on the map in this region, it's on the map in this country, it's on the map in Europe, it's on the map globally. And so this is a really exciting opportunity, a sort of capture the momentum opportunity that we need to make sure we make the most of.
Yeah, and I mean, even like when you look at the life sciences, for instance, in the third quarter of 2025, then although overall the investment and venture capital has been less, the companies that have been invested in the biggest raises still in Cambridge. You look at Charm, you look at Enhanced, there's some optimism, I think. And if you are going to invest, and I think Cambridge is pretty one of the safest places to invest in terms of the support that the companies have in the ecosystem as a whole.
And you've picked a couple of companies there, Kathryn. Yeah, I just started writing down here. You've got Trimtech Therapeutics, you've got Cusp AI. I mean, there really are some impressive companies coming through. Do you think that they're getting enough profile, or do you think that there's more that we could do to raise their profile even more?
Well, you mentioned Trim, which is a passion of mine. Trim was a company that was created by CIC and the Dimension Discovery Fund as part of the SV Group. So that was a jointly created company with an entrepreneur in residence named Damien. And Trim is exciting because it is solving a problem that many of us are going to end up with which is neurodegenerative disorders. And I think when you look at life sciences, neurodegenerative disorders are sort of the final frontier of where there is a huge unmet need, but almost no curative treatments out there. There's only one class of drugs that's approved by the FDA for the disease. So there's lots more work to be done. And Trim has a completely novel biology, which I won't go into huge details because I won't be able to stop. But it could be transformative. And the founders, Will and Leo, have been working away at this challenge for a decade in their laboratories. You know, what we've done is we've brought capital and talent and a really ambitious plan together to launch Trim and raise £25 million as a seed round. So it's a great example of what we want to do more of in Cambridge. And that syndicate that funded Trim is a global syndicate. You've got UK investors, you've got European investors, you've got American investors, which will hopefully come together to make a global category-leading company.
I mean, I think for Cusp, it's phenomenal, that story, isn't it? 18 months from idea to, 100 million. And I think in the UK, that story is really well known. I think, Chad, as everybody kind of knows, given his previous history. But I think my test is I ask Roxanne Vaza from Station F and I go, have you heard of this company? Because she'll always say, I don't know any Cambridge companies, even though they're amazing. And actually she'd heard of Cusp. However, if you go to Boston or New York, would they have heard of Cusp? I'm not sure. So there's always more we can do, I think, for our companies. But I mean, what a phenomenal story.
A bit like the conversation when you ask people to name an entrepreneur and they come up with Alan Sugar and Richard Branson and you're like, oh, come on. So I do think there's a lot more storytelling that we can do, but you're definitely on the journey with that.
A reflective question for me. You know, you obviously described the momentum and that you built up. But so, you know, when something has momentum, it kind of feels like it's obvious. Of course, this is going to be successful. But obviously that success was never guaranteed. And I think it's fair to say that prior to Innovate Cambridge, Cambridge didn't have a common voice. It didn't have a common brand. What have been the one or two nuggets that have unlocked that? Because I'm sure it's not just luck and timing that's kind of gone into that. There's been a ton of hard work. And maybe a kind of supplementary question to that, which is perhaps a bigger question, is I know when the thinking was done around Innovate Cambridge, a ton of research was done and you visited loads of other innovation clusters. So maybe for the wider audience, what kind of gaps did you identify between Cambridge and those other innovation clusters? And what plans are in place to close those gaps and take a leadership position?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the second question first. And I think, Mike can kind of add to that as well, given that you were really part of that Boston Consulting Group thing. But I think, when I first joined Innovate Cambridge, Dermot, and I think he came on the podcast and came and said it as well, is that he said actually other global ecosystems were really getting their act together in terms of having a joined up vision, clear narrative, clear strategy for their innovation clusters. So from Boston to Israel, it was really obvious that that's what they had and Cambridge didn't. So I think what Innovate Cambridge has done has been able to pull that strategy together. But I think the other thing is that it's a true collaboration. So when I talk about Innovate Cambridge having an awesome year, that's collective. It's the collective Cambridge ecosystem that's had that year. So, our partnerships from Cambridge University Health Partners to the University of Cambridge to Cambridge Innovation Capital, everyone is truly on board because we know we want to secure more venture capital, create more spin-outs. We want to tackle that problem of how do we scale companies in the UK and keep them in the UK as well? How do we attract more international investment? And we all want the same thing. And actually now we've got a plan that we all agree on to get that thing. And I think, one of the other nuggets is actually having the wider ecosystem being able to have that single voice into government, because I think that's really in the end what has influenced the fact that when we had the summit, everything aligned to be able to make that settlement announcement for Cambridge, which is phenomenal, 400 million at this end of the Oxcam corridor for, whatever, transport, affordable housing, all of the things that are going to make the Cambridge ecosystem successful. We were talking about enablers earlier, that's what that's going to do. And also the kind of business case to create a innovation hub on the scale of Station F in Cambridge again, and I think it was, Lord Vallon stood on the stage at the summit and he said, we would be mad not to back Cambridge. We've got, Oxford and we got Cambridge. And actually, as the UK, we should be backing the founders that are in that ecosystem and we should be backing the ecosystem. So I mean, for me, I think the innovation hub was a clear gap that had been identified and I think there's been movement on that. But I truly, really it's because the ecosystem has got that come together, co-created a strategy and delivering it together. And we have pride together in the fact that there's progress against that strategy. We're accountable to the targets, and so it's been good, yeah.
The research that was done at the beginning, when all this was, first conceived, what gaps, what deltas did that research uncover compared to those other global innovation centres, and what's been happening to close those gaps or take a leadership position?
Yeah, when we did the research, the direction we took wasn't what I expected. We almost asked the wrong question at the beginning, which is how do we become the next Kendall Square or Cambridge, Massachusetts? And that was definitely the wrong question. What the right question was, which we of course went into, is what are the best and most exciting bits that we can cherry pick from Boston area, from the Bay Area, from Shenzhen, from Israel, from, et cetera, et cetera. And where could we very specifically add those to Cambridge, UK, to help us not be the next Boston, but be the best Cambridge we can possibly be, but learning lessons from other ecosystems. And so when you sit here now and you think about it, some of it's quite obvious. The one that's moved the needle the most is the physical space that we were lacking beforehand. And so this is not to say there's only one exciting place in Cambridge, but we were lacking a central location to be able to be a starting point before you come to the Bradfield Centre, before you go to the Babraham, or before you go to the Science Park. And so I think the Innovation Hub is an interesting starting point for those who want to get involved in the ecosystem and meet people. The other bit that took us by huge surprise, but was really needed, was this idea of more inclusive innovation and growth. And in full transparency, that wasn't a direction we were initially going with. But when you speak to the broader stakeholders of Cambridge, it is such a miss of not making that an absolute top priority as we as an ecosystem try to move forward. And so actually I would say inclusive growth is really the number one agenda item that not just Innovate Cambridge are progressing, but I think every organization that cares about the future of Cambridge is making that an important priority. And we have a huge amount of work to do there. But I think we could be a pioneer in that space because no one else has quite nailed it yet. And so where we could differentiate ourselves as being, dare I say, the most inclusive innovation ecosystem, that's a really ambitious goal, and we're miles and miles away from it. But I think we need to be deliberate to prioritize that.
I was just going to say the other thing I think, and we talked about it a little bit, is its scale. So if you look at the amount of investment that's gone in Massachusetts in the life sciences, whatever, billions, similarly in New York. And actually what we've got in Cambridge is the most concentrated ecosystem, but what we now need to do is scale. So I think some of the work that we've been doing is around mechanisms to scale. And one of the really important things is how we partner with other cities around the UK to scale. Cambridge is important, but it isn't the be-all and end-all, and we don't just keep adding on to Cambridge, but we partner with other cities like Manchester. And actually, if you look at Boston and other cities, that's new. So that, again, as Mike said, we look to other ecosystems to say, how do you work? But we're also saying, but what else could we do? And I think the Manchester partnership, it truly it's definitely a national and probably a global first, really, to create that kind of innovation partnership across two cities that are geographically pretty distinct.
Let's come back to Manchester, but I want to go to Oxford first of all. So, that collaboration, is that going to exist with Oxford as well? Because they've set up now their own equivalent of Innovate Cambridge. So tell us what your thoughts are around that.
I'm showing Faye my Equinox notebook because I truly am on board with the equivalent of Innovate Cambridge in Oxford. So equitable innovation in Oxford is the equivalent of Innovate Cambridge, but they're early on their journey. They're probably 2 years ago where we were with Innovate Cambridge, and they're sort of building it.
I think they've seen the impact that Innovate Cambridge has had and that you've had, Kathryn. So can I have a piece of that, please? Is what they're doing, which is great to see.
It's brilliant, but it also gives you a respective organisation over in Oxford to be able to collaborate with that brings together industry, academia and local government. So actually, I think we'll be able to move faster. And it's similar, we've got Unit M in Manchester, we've got Equinox in Oxford, other cities are setting up very similar organisations. And again, I think it will just make it easier for the UK to be globally competitive as we all work together as clusters through those organisations.
As we kind of close the year out, we are reflecting back a lot of the things we talked about throughout the year. Scaling has come up already in the conversation, access to that growth capital, keeping companies in the UK. What's your scorecard? What's your wish list for Santa as we come to the end of the year? What are the missing pieces to make that a reality?
I've got a couple of things, or CIC has a few things on our agenda specifically. There has been a number of very high-functioning, exciting companies that have lacked the growth capital needed to truly explode and explode in a good way. And so we've been carefully, calmly building global syndicates around these companies, which we hope will be able to make some awesome announcements in the new year where there'll be some really high-profile funding rounds. That's on my wish list for those to complete. Also, exits, and exits are a great thing because what it does is it unlocks capital, it unlocks teams to go and do the next thing. And ideally, if you build a great company and exit it, that creates 10 companies coming out of it. And so there's been a real lack of exits over the last year, but same idea, quietly, calmly in the background. There's lots of discussions happening, and hopefully we'll be able to share some great news about exits as well come in. And that's what we need. We need more growth rounds and more exits to unlock capital in people and sort of keep the flywheel going. So my wish list will hopefully be, some exciting press releases in Q1 communicating these events.
I'm firstly going to carry on the growth capital theme in the sense that I just think we need to make sure that the Mansion House stuff is going ahead at pace and that there are pathways for those funds to be able to end up in the companies that we're talking about and you talk about all the time on the podcast. And then the second thing is I would love a couple more global corporate R&D centres here in Cambridge, to collaborate with, AstraZeneca is a complete showcase of that. AstraZeneca and what they bring to the ecosystem is just phenomenal. Hundreds of partnerships, collaborations, the investment. And I would love to have a couple more, not necessarily as big as AstraZeneca, but just a couple more global partnerships like that where their R&D headquarters are in Cambridge.
Discussions underway. Do you have specific, you don't obviously have to tell me, but is it,
You're looking for an exclusive for the podcast.
No, always. But, do you have a specific set of targets for that, or is it much more a case of, look, we're open, come and talk to us?
I think there's a bit of both. There's certainly a plan to go international to sell Cambridge to make sure that we can have more companies coming in. But we certainly have got a list of companies that we're interested in, but maybe not as announcements as soon as Mike, but I'll ask Father Christmas and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Mike, I wanted to come back to you on the exit conversation. So I was at a CW founders dinner last week and Christian Segastrali was talking and he was saying, and I'm kind of para-quoting him here, so don't have a go at me, that investors should stop, and I'm not saying that you do this, by the way, but investors shouldn't ask what the exit strategy is and shouldn't be looking for the exit strategy. They should be putting another zero on. So we should be looking at building unicorns, building decacorns, and on it goes. What's your view on that? It surely has to be a little bit of a mix.
I think you're right. It is a mix. When we see exciting companies come and pitch us, it is not about what's your exit strategy. That has sort of a negative connotation to it. It's what's your ambition for the company and what's your plan to list the company? Because at some point you need to have liquidity for the venture capitalists to be able to recycle that money into the next early stage company. But listing allows, that liquidity, but also public equities to come in and grow these companies even further. And so for us, is there ambition to grow something massive? And then you can think about how you do that. And not all companies are destined for an IPO. Some companies are better to grow to a certain point and then be part of a larger organization. So I think it's a case-by-case question of what the right sort of exit strategy is. But in the 10 years that I've been in Cambridge working with early-stage companies, I've noticed a dramatic increase in the ambition of founders. And 10 years ago, the ambition would be, I'd love to sell for $50 million or £50 million. Now it's, I want to be the next, forget about unicorn, I want to be the next decacorn. And so that ambition is what will lead us to have fantastic outcomes. And ultimately, not exits, but ultimately growth capital coming in, unlocking early stage capital, having growth capital and continued growth.
I think it is that ambition, isn't it? Trying to get people to really grasp the ambition. And at 21 to Watch in March this year, I said there, why do we keep talking about unicorns? We want the decacorns and the centacorns. Let's just go, like Christian says, put lots of zeros on the end, because if you do that, you will get the exit, you get the regeneration of the capital into the marketplace. So, I'm forever an optimist, I guess.
Yeah, me too.
A growing list of mythical creatures to...
Yeah, I just made all those up.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hoping you both get some downtime over the festive period. When you come back in the new year, what's the to-do list look like? What's the first thing that you're going to be working on when you open that laptop? And what do you hope to achieve by the end of next year when we get you back on for a similar conversation?
I'm going to say a couple of things. The first one is next year we've got to do a lot on the Manchester partnership. We really need to activate that. So when we come back next year, I want to be able to say that we've got companies that have got footprints in both cities. We've got talent going between both cities. We've got investment flow. And actually we're going out globally and saying, the UK is amazing and come and be in both Cambridge and Manchester and access the assets that are in both places. So that would be what I really want to get on next year. And then I think the other exciting thing, you may have seen it announced today, is that Roland Sinker is going to be joining the university to look at innovation and provide even more kind of momentum behind innovation from inside the university. And so I'm really looking forward actually to working even more closely with the academics and the innovation and particularly inclusive innovation reviews that the university's got planned next year. So I'm looking forward to working with Roland. And then the next thing is included and working with the City Council and being involved in career pathways and working with schools and trying to get kids getting ready to be able to access our innovation sector and take the jobs that we've got available for them in the coming years.
One of the things that the Innovate Cambridge are doing right now are thinking about the agenda for the 2026 summit. And so what are the key things we want to talk about in October, November of 2026, and what do we need to do now to make those things come to life? And I think Kathryn's going to be, once again, spoiled for choice where there's 50 things we could talk about, but how do we talk about, 3, 4, or 5 really impactful things? And so there'll be lots to talk about. And I hope one of those things will be more company creations like TRIMS that the Cambridge ecosystem creates and scales, the starting from Cambridge and scaling this globally. I'd like to see more of those happen. I'd also like to see Kathryn stand on stage beside a CEO who's raised, $100 million plus and really walking the walk and being that ambitious company that others can follow. And so
maybe one more thing, and it goes back to Faye's comment about telling stories, I think, is that on day one when I open the laptop, I want to spend next year getting underneath the bonnet of some of the numbers. We talk about overall numbers all the time, how much investment's been made, how many spin-outs, but actually we don't often get under the bonnet and tell the story of the entrepreneur so that our companies are known globally. So I would love to do some more of that next year as well. Yeah.
What a great list for Father Christmas there. So we'll write it up for you, send it on its merry way, and then see where we end up at the summit next year. So thank you so much for your time, helping us wrap up 2025 and putting some challenges out there for 2026.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It'll really help others discover the show.